Great to have the chance to have a chat with everyone. There's so great deal to talk about and try and go over the last few 2 weeks, really. So rather than sort of go back to the very beginning of Trump's win, I'd rather talk about where we are now. A lot of people had said to me, when Trump won, why haven't you done an update? When are you going to say something? And the truth was that it wasn't a surprise to me that he won. And I wanted a lot of other people to get their, I don't mean to be rude, but get their crazy energy out. The social media, the alternative news was just absolutely swamped with lots of people and lots of comments. And that's fair enough, and that's great. And I knew that what would be more important would be a little while later. I'd always said that the time between Trump's election victory and the 20th of January was a vacuum. And this was the most dangerous period. So rather than start off with, how the election victory went, I'd rather talk about where we are now because it's, in many ways, it's just as important. You will already, by now, know that Biden has authorized the use of long-range missiles into Russia. And the big question, I think, is why now? For months and months and months, that Biden has been asked repeatedly to allow Ukraine to use, and let's say they're American missiles, it's the ICU, it's the chip in there that's American manufactured. It's not necessarily the missile, but it's the chip, it's the technology. And that's just an aside, but I'd like to try and be quite clear on that. So that's why Biden says he was the only one that could give the authority to use it. And why has he done it now? So even people who don't listen to me or listen to people like me, they will be asking the question, why now with 8 weeks left of his presidency has he agreed to do this? When Putin has been quite clear that that would be a grave escalation and could lead to, what the mainstream news would report as a third world war. So if Biden hasn't totally lost his head, then maybe what he's saying is his party lost the election. He doesn't care anymore. And he's really angry. And I know that there are people in the Biden administration who are incredibly angry with the 50-odd% of people in America who voted for Trump. And so maybe he thinks this is one way to pay them all back. And yes, I know he would also be paying back the 49, 48% or whatever it is that voted for his party. But sometimes people who have lost their mind, they target everybody just to get at one particular group. So I wouldn't be at all surprised if this was Biden basically saying, I've got nothing to lose. My side didn't win the election. You can all go down the pan, basically. Now, the issue is, of course, what can President-elect Trump do? Because it might be that Putin orders all of his diplomatic missions, all of his embassies to literally close in NATO. All the countries in NATO, he could literally close them in 48 hours if he so chose, and brings all the staff back, including ambassador level. He can then throw out all of the embassies of all the NATO countries out of Russia. He can put nuclear weapons on immediate standby. He can start moving around the nuclear weapons. Many of them are tracked. They're on vehicles to locations and keep changing it every day. He can change the nuclear codes. That will all be picked up by the CIA, who will report back that this is occurring in Russia. The mainstream news will then run with that. And I was thinking, if that was to play out, what would likely happen? Well, one of the likelihoods is that Biden is found to be mentally unstable, and he's removed, and Kamala Harris comes in for the last 8 weeks, and absolutely takes us as a world to the brink of something really, really bad, or she declines to come in, and somehow Trump comes in. But Trump, as Becky had pointed out, Trump has already had dialogue both with Putin, although that was denied, and dialogue with the Ukrainian president, which the mainstream confirmed. So it might be that the Biden administration, and I'm including Kamala Harris, appear to take the world to an absolute edge of disaster. And President-elect Trump, even though he's not inaugurated, could actually diffuse it. So this is a very, very, very big development. And it'll have a very big effect on the mainstream news. Not clear how the mainstream will deal with this, but it is a pivotal turning point. I'm not here to say who's right and who's wrong, because that's just not very helpful. But I would say that there is the likelihood of some form of emergency broadcast system between what I call this vacuum between now and the 20th, if it appears that the world is sliding into a very serious situation, which would impact America foremost. It would also impact Great Britain, some of the Baltic countries, possibly France, but maybe not Germany, because you saw how the German Chancellor did a special phone call with Putin, basically said, we don't want any part of what might happen, until the media got hold of it. And then he then came out and sort of retracted it. But the reality was that Germans know the history of 1945, and they don't want 1 million Russian soldiers coming through as they did in 45. So I think what German Chancellor did was position himself very, very cleverly, actually, though the mainstream media see him as a traitor to Ukraine. I think he's a very capable man. And what he's done is he's positioned Germany so it's not directly in the firing line for Russia, because he doesn't want history to replay itself. So it's the citizens of people like in America and Great Britain and some of the other countries who I think now, if the mainstream media piles on pressure, they will go to their governments. In Great Britain, Keir Starmer is all gung-ho about allowing Ukraine to fire these rockets into Russia. And I think that if the mainstream media, newspapers, television really start laying out their vision for where that might end, unless it's stopped, people in the conurbations, places like London and New York, which are key targets, for goodness sake, the capitals, key targets, 8 million people in London, I don't know how many in New York, will make their politicians very aware of how vulnerable they feel, because not everybody can sell their property and move to the countryside out of the way of any issues. And so that, I think, is the most important aspect where we go now, and how the mainstream play with that, and what movement President-elect Trump has in terms of defusing what could become a critical situation for the whole planet, but mainly for NATO countries. So that's something that, that I think we will need to watch very closely to see how it plays out. All right, that's, I think, a key movement. In terms of the election itself, people are shocked when I say I didn't stay up to watch it. I set my alarm for 1 o'clock in the morning, UK time, 3 o'clock in the morning, and 5 o'clock. And I woke up, caught the news, went back to sleep. I did that 3 times because I wanted to see, most importantly, whether the votes were still being counted. You remember in 2020, they stopped counting. And then the next morning, there was a massive vote dropping into that, which changed the whole dynamics. So I wanted to check to see if the votes would be counted, and they were. So I knew that we weren't going to have to go through that again. That had all been sorted. And I was so confident that Trump would win. We thought that between 290 and 300 college votes. That's what we predicted. So he got over 300. So that's incredible. We weren't right, but we weren't far off it. And it was in the right direction. That's great. I knew that the Senate would change, and there's one more Senate seat. And I don't know why they're not calling it. It'll be 53 for the Republican Party. The Congress is very interesting because there are a couple of dynamics in play. One is the Brunson brothers. And we know they're real because Kerry Cassidy interviewed one of the Brunson boys, and I listened into that. So they're real. The question is just how real is what's behind them or behind that. I don't mean that disparagingly. What I mean is just how much of that has really embedded within the Supreme Court. Because it is possible that the Supreme Court between now and the 20th could say all those lawmakers who voted to suppress an investigation into corruption are removed for 10 years or so from being representatives, be lawmakers. So if that were to happen, it would not vindicate anybody who said there was a steal in the 2020 election. That's not what it would be about. It would merely be to say that the Congress should have investigated it. I think there was something like 149 lawmakers who voted that it should be investigated. Now, all of those who vote against that, their names will be recorded. And it is possible that they could be removed, which, until the fresh elections took place, would leave the Republican Party in a very strong position. So that's one possibility. The other possibility is that the lawmakers know that Trump has the vast majority of the American military on his side, and they will be unwilling to challenge his picks for key government positions. We've seen the mainstream media absolutely go crazy at some of these people and trying to dig the dirt on them as a typical deep state operation. It might be that just the sheer personality of President-elect Trump carries this through, but I think they're more likely going to have to wave a big stick in the background to actually get this to happen. How much of this will be shared with the public, I doubt. I don't think a great deal will. I think there's a lot of wheeling and dealing taking place at the moment. So we're not surprised that he won. We knew it would be a landslide. We didn't know how much. And as soon as President-elect Trump televised with the sitting president, Biden, and Biden says a smooth transition, that was the message out that from their side, they wouldn't rock the boat. So that was a message from the Biden handlers or the Biden team out to the minions. Don't rock the boat. Just let this transition go through. And they'll leave boat rocking to somebody else. They'll leave the issues to be generated from other of their allies, not literally coming from the political party. And so not surprising that he won. A great relief. Let's not underplay that. A great relief that he won. Don't expect anyone early days to start talking about the 2020 steal. Trump won't need to mention that. He's got enough on his plate now. The fact that he's put what the mainstream media refer to as a vaccine skeptic into the front running for the medical post is enough to crash shares in Big Pharma. Within 2 days of the election, Big Pharma chief executives and their top lawyer in America were already meeting to work out how they could manage what might be coming. And yes, they're disruptors. That's a very good term. They are to disrupt the status quo, the deep state, the people who are career politicians within a non-political role. Yeah, America's different. America's different. In Great Britain, we have civil servants, and they managed, supposed to be, not politically, but of course they are politically driven. In America, it's far more complex and more challenging than that. So Trump knows that he has to clear out a lot of people who are in a job for life, and they've become enmeshed in the politics that they think they have the right to press on the American people. Next point. I never really agreed with people that said that the vast majority of the American citizenry had woken up. And if you look at the election results, there's about 3 or 4 million votes between what Harris got and what Trump got. Now, let's just take that at face value. Let's just take that at face value. That should tell anyone in the United States who didn't already know it that it's not quite split down the middle, but it's not far from it. So maybe these 8 weeks, 9 weeks before the 20th of January have to be an opportunity for the White House to somehow educate that huge voter bloc that voted for Harris, those millions and millions of people who just went out and voted for the donkey. So what could happen? Could it be that the mainstream media declare we're on the edge of a third world war? Could it be that the Biden administration, and I'm including Harris in that, and including the Democrats in the Senate and the House, all appear to be associated with that? And then you've got this one man on his own, which is Trump, through his own methods and his own contacts, actually manages to diffuse that situation. Is that one possible way, I'm asking myself, that these huge numbers of Kamala Harris voters can actually say, we got the wrong end of the history, we got the wrong end of the story. We actually should have voted for Trump. So I don't think it would make a vast number of Democrat voters vote for Trump. But what it might do is considerably reduce the criticism, because mainstream media, if it doesn't think that the spending, the money spending public are behind it, it will change its song. It will change its narrative. If you take Walt Disney, if people stopped going through the turnstiles at the House of Mouse, they would change their whole layout. They would change the story. They'd change anything, because without that income, they're finished. And so if you take away income and replace it with political loyalty, senators and Congress will only do what the majority of the people want them to do, unless they're retiring at the end of the session and they don't care. A bit like Biden doesn't care. Trash the world. It doesn't matter. He's going to January. So this is a great opportunity, I believe, for the White Hats in the next few weeks to try and get a message across to these millions and millions of Kamala Harris voters that actually what they voted for was wrong, and they're going to be shown it. So it's not over. It isn't all, oh, it's a done deal. There's more to play out. And in terms of the RV, because I know lots of people are watching that, still hasn't happened yet. No matter what people are saying, just as there wasn't an EBS before the election, just as there wasn't a stock market crash before the election, just as there wasn't a worldwide banking crash before the election, just as there was an election, and all these people were saying there won't be an election, just as there wasn't a Supreme Court coming in and ruling for Trump before the election, there is a generated news feed, which thankfully I didn't hook onto. And those of you who have been following me for a number of years now, you know that I said that I will refuse to give news, even if it's from the White House, if I know it's a lie. I won't do it. I just won't do it. I let others do it. And there were other people who were quite blunt about it, and they said they would be quite happy to lie to you, the audience, if it was what the White Hats wanted. Now, I and Becky couldn't run a spiritual organization and and be two-faced like that? How could you do what we do uh, and then say, yeah, I'm lying to you, but it's okay because the good guys want me to lie to you? That's actually what a spy does. And years ago, I said publicly said I'm not doing that, and thankfully that was respected. I don't know that it was liked, but it was respected um, by the people at the top, and they stopped giving me BS because I wasn't going with it anyway. So others went with the BS, and I didn't want to have a direct confrontation with anybody. But I just said, look, you know, my experience, my contacts, who are very real, that this is not going to happen. And what I'm saying now is we're in this vacuum period. And depending what the mainstream news does, the White Hats do not control all of the mainstream. Some of it they do, but not all of it. And it depends how it moves, which pathway this news story takes, and how many millions of devoted anti-Trumpers at least move into the middle ground and say that they don't have an opinion. That's the real key, because you can't have a country that's nearly split down the middle. And what did Trump say? It was about healing. And healing is literally about the mindset of the people that live in the country, your citizens. And you won't heal them with divisive arguments, but you might heal them if they are shown the path that they were on. And because Trump has won, he's going to take America and the world to a different path, which is a better future. But you can't force that down people's throats. They have to come to it themselves. They have to have the model played out, shown to them, and then they make the choice as to what they want to do. So this sort of chat from me wouldn't have gone down so well a few days ago. Everyone was talking about he's won and it's great and everything's going to be fine and all of this. And that had to pass through, that had to happen. But the reality is that we need to have a level head, keep our feet firmly on the ground, and to realize that awful lot of stuff coming out, both on the mainstream and on the alternative news, is actually BS. It's just nonsense. And some people were really sucked into it and they went for it. They're very quiet now. Others were very against it. I tried to play a middle ground because I don't want to alienate people who are going through a process of learning. So that's it, really. All eyes on the mainstream now, because the mainstream are playing for the Kamala Harris voters. All right, they've lost the Trump voters. They're playing for the other 49% of America. So look at mainstream. Look at mainstream. Look at mainstream. Try to say, what is its role now? Is it really trying to change the world? Or is it actually trying to control and manage this vast number of Democrat voters? That's what's being played for. Because no president, and I'm an ex-politician, nothing as grand as a president, but I am a man who stood for votes and won and went back to the electorate 4 years later and won again and again. And it's easy to get elected. Actually, people won't like that, but it's easy to get elected. It's very, very difficult to get elected a second time, because the first time you stand for election, you promise whatever, and people say, yeah, I like what that person's saying, I'll vote for them. When it comes around again in 4 years' time, it's not what you said, it's what you did. And then they'll vote for or against you in how you delivered your program. So for Trump to come back officially this time is even greater than his first win, because he has been elected on what he did and what he said, and they put the two together. And that's the the sign of a very good politician, somebody who can win again without the help of the deep state. I'm not talking about people who manipulate elections. I'm talking about a free and fair election where somebody is returned, like President-elect Trump. Because if President-elect Trump was no good, the American people wouldn't have had him back, but they did. And so, without calling in the savior aspect of it, I think he probably is the only person now who can rally free-minded people to prevent what is fast looking like an incredibly serious situation militarily. So, not worried. There's not going to be a third world. I think the media may do a very good job at that, but I don't. And so I'm not fear-mongering. I'm not scared, but I'm saying that something has to play out to engage with the Kamala Harris voters. Right. We'll do another one of these, but just give it a few days and let's see where we go with it. So thank you for everyone who plays a role in connecting consciousness, whether you're event hosts, admins, whether you translate, and the coordinators always get thanked. And sometimes we don't thank the other members of our team. And I thank the members as well who are in connecting consciousness. At least you have your feet on the ground, unlike some of these other groups that, I even saw a post the other day where someone was saying that President Trump had a mask. He wasn't really President Trump at all. He was somebody else. That this sort of craziness is we've just got to switch off from it, because if we don't give it attention, whoever's doing this nonsense will just stop. All right. Thank you. Take care.